program today, we will have speakers who will share with us stories of women who for decades have been involved not only in resisting, but in building as well, resisting militarism and war, and actively building peace, democracy, and supporting the liberation of all women, all peoples, from oppression and all forms of reaction in their communities and in their countries. So after the input of our speakers, we will have the opportunity to deepen the conversation with them and among ourselves, and to discuss how we can contribute in strengthening women's engagement in peace building and enhancing democratic processes that protect rights and serve the needs of the community, especially of women who are among the most disenfranchised in society.
Yes, so let us welcome our first speaker for today, Pippa Bartolotti. Pippa is one of the most active members of GWAN, the Global Women United for Peace Against NATO, and she has worked in the field of human rights and climate change for most of her life, from being an outspoken advocate against violence against women and sex trafficking, riding with Convoy 5 from her home in Wales to Gaza, to experience the reality of the blockade and genocide being perpetrated on Palestinians. She continues her anti-war advocacy with GWAN and with UNAC, which is the United National Anti-War Coalition. And Pippa is also a published author. So welcome, Pippa.
Well, hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here in such wonderful company. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I think Isabella probably knows more about me than I know about myself. So if we could just move to my first slide, that would be a good start. That's great, thank you. Well, there we are. This is part of what we do, going to NATO summits, joining with others in demonstrations, protests, and anti-war, anti-NATO alternative summits. We work hard all through the year, and this I'll tell you about later. Could I see the second slide, please? Well, it had to begin somewhere, didn't it? And this was in Madrid in 2021 at a NATO summit, which a lot of us randomly went to, not planning to know each other or meet each other. But here we are, and we are certainly getting together like-minded people. You can see I'm on the far right, Anne Wright, an ex-US colonel, is next to me. She is a dissenter. Ulla Klotzer, who is a founding member of this organization. Haki, who sadly is no longer with us, wonderful, wonderful person. And Leah, who is a great source of strength to us all by being there and helping. So we are the start of it all. Right, could I have no slides for a moment? Oh no, I need the third slide. I'm sorry, I haven't got my prompt in front of me. Yes. So I think I've got time just read out the beginning of our declaration. So here we go. We are women from across the world who deeply love our planet. We cherish the universal principles of equality, justice, and peace affirmed by the United Nations Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We fight for the affirmation of the rights of women and peoples against all forms of violence, exploitation, and discrimination. For decades, we have been engaged in the search for global peace, for a new world order that abolishes war. We recognize the role that capitalism plays in generating militarism and war. And we want a new, non-militarized security to ensure the life and the health of present and future generations of all on this planet and of the planet itself. Our aspiration for peace is today threatened by the escalating arms race and the risk of nuclear war, the strengthening of military alliances and the militarization of international relations. All this risks leading humanity to catastrophe. NATO's decisions since 1991 have in large part been responsible for this developing global confrontation. Right, no slides for a moment, please, Katie. Well, it had to begin somewhere, didn't it? And the declaration was the first thing. But something else started at the beginning, and since I'm the first speaker, let's start with what got us to where we are today. The traditional myth that early humans operated under a strict division of labor where men hunted and women gathered is completely wrong. In fact, it is a lie. Evidence demonstrates that women frequently and habitually hunted, actively participating in securing game, including big game. We were never the meek and subservient beings the patriarchy wanted us to be. Over 200 million years of biological and social progress, from the dawn of mammalian lactation to tool use and modern society, the female biological form has been a driving force of our species' survival and development. But we have been disenfranchised from the beginning. From the beginning, in fact, of white colonial history at least. Yet, before European colonization, many First Nations and Indigenous peoples across the Americas and elsewhere thrived under matriarchal and matrilineal systems. Far from the patriarchal stereotypes later imposed by colonial rule, women held immense political, spiritual, and economic authority as community builders, clan leaders, strategists, and peacekeepers. Writing women out of history is part of the patriarchal system. Writing women out of the peace process makes it 70%, I'll say that again, 70% more likely to fail. It is we who pick up the pieces after war. We nurse the wounded, the damaged, the children. We produce half the world's food supply. We build families and communities. And after conflict, we rebuild again and again and again. Yet we never wanted the wars, and we never started them. The systems today are not designed for us. The banks, the politics, the military, the institutions, the religions, the laws, the working day even, the education systems, the wage structure, even modern medicine is mostly designed for male bodies. The war machine was never part of our world and never will it be. Women today represent just a meager 16% of negotiators in active peace processes. We are highly effective peacemakers because we excel at bridging grassroots coalitions with political elites, fostering inclusive dialogue across divided groups, and championing policies that address the root causes of conflict. Today, there is an uphill battle to reform our world into something more loving, more beautiful, more peaceful. We are burdened with an enduring struggle against the willful war machine, the profiteers, and the viciousness of the Epstein class. Could I have slide 4 now, please? At Guan, we give women a voice. Through our webinars, we bring unsung experts with knowledge and honesty about the horrors of war and the part NATO plays in destruction and warmongering. We explore alternatives to war. We highlight the insidious role of NATO, the insidious role that NATO plays in militarizing society and femwashing the armed forces. These are some of our most popular webinars, and here you see we talk about resolving conflict. We talk about conflict in far places. We talk about other societies and their approach to the conflict so often demanded by the Western leaders. Slide 5, please. We collaborate, as women do, with other organizations wherever we find common ground. We do not compete. Always we know we are stronger together. With the IWA and Resist NATO, with UNAC, the IPV, and many other activist organizations, we draw on the strengths of others, we make friends and alliances, and together we magnify our message. One meets NATO head-on every year, and our goal is to abolish it. NATO cannot be reconciled with our principle of taking care of the world and all who are in it. That includes non-humans. That includes the animals we rear to eat. That includes the insects, the birds, and the wild places. War is counterproductive to everything we hold dear. And the principle of taking care of the world is a principle we strive to affirm globally. Slide 6, please. We acknowledge that many women across the world are economically challenged and cannot come to alternative NATO summits. But they can send their faces and their banners and their messages. Every year we make a video collage of hundreds of women who know and understand that NATO is the enemy of peace and stability. Please go to our website and you'll see some of these video collages we've made. We try to bring women in from all parts of the world. It is not their fault they are economically challenged. And we do everything we can to make amends and give them a voice. At GWAN, we have picked our struggle. We are focused. We are global women united for peace against NATO. Without the warmongering of NATO, the insupportable expenditure on weapons, the nuclear armaments, and the increasing militarization of our societies, the world will be a better and a far safer place. Abolishing NATO won't solve all our troubles, but it will be a fine start. Please do join us. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'll hand you back to our hosts.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pippa, for explaining all of that. I really appreciated the tackling the roots of this like prehistoric history, like the myth about men and women and being the society of hunter and gatherers versus men being the hunters, women being the gatherers. And I also didn't know that 16% of women are a part of the peace negotiations and stuff. That really is wild, that statistic. In general, like, thank you so much for highlighting the work of highlighting the insidious role of NATO and also mentioning the other forms of life that are affected by war, that and not just humans. So yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. And then I believe Andrea is going to introduce the next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Pippa. That was indeed very enlightening and very inspiring. So our next speaker is Stephanie Andreou. Stephanie is a filmmaker from Cyprus, and her films often explore anti-imperialism, survival, and zombie-laden capitalism. She gained her Bachelor of Arts in Fine Arts with a focus in video art and sculpture in the United Kingdom, before crossing the pond to receive an MFA in computer art from the School of Visual Arts in 2012. So Stephanie has worked as an editor for over 11 years on documentaries that have screened at Sundance, True Falls, Tribeca, Full Frame, New York Film Festival, and the Rotterdam, as well as Academy Award nominated for Best Feature Documentary, Time. She has also received support from the Gotham and New York State Council for the Arts for her film Freedom is a Place. Her debut feature documentary, Women Walk Home, has been pitched at prestigious international documentary film festivals and has picked up several awards, including from the Documentary Association of Europe and from the European Commission's Creative Europe Media Program. Stephanie will share with us tonight the stories of heroic Cypriot women who challenged Turkish occupation forces to reclaim their homes and their homeland, and the sisterhood and solidarity forged in their walk home. So please save your questions for Stephanie later, and for our other speakers as well during the question and answer section of the program. And thank you, Stephanie, for giving us the opportunity to share the journey of these women, and a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you for having me and getting the opportunity to share this story with you all. So I want to introduce you all to Women Walk Home. It was an anti-occupation movement, women's movement that happened in Cyprus in the 70s and 80s. One that I didn't grow up knowing, even though I grew up here. They organized as women, not because they believed that women are inherently more peaceful, but because they reversed the male gaze against the idea that they are peaceful in order to use it as a tool, as an organizing tool, which I found quite profound, discovering this history. So I'll just go through the recent history of Cyprus so we're all sort of on the same page as to why this happened. So basically the Republic of Cyprus was formed in 1961. Actually, I have my date wrong. And it was based off of a liberation struggle that happened in Cyprus in between the late 50s. And then between the early days of the Republic, there was deep strife with the right-wing militias who were murdering mostly Turkish Cypriots, but also Greek Cypriots. And the Turkish Cypriot minority left the Republic, their representation in the Republic, and were made refugees in order to gain safety, and moved into enclaves. And then in 1974, the deep wish of the right-wing militias, of the Greek Cypriot right-wing militias to join Greece sort of really took off, with many threats to the current president. They organized a coup, and then Turkey invaded because it was, their claim is that they were a guarantor power of the Republic. But it was clearly an invasion. This created 200,000 refugees, internal refugees mostly, and this was the backdrop for how Women Walk Home came to organize to walk the refugees back to their homes. The first march happened in only 9 months after the invasion. Sorry, I'll go back to this slide first just to show you the present sort of division of the island and the green line that exists, and just how heavily militarized Cyprus is in general. You can see that there's there's lots and lots of military here, even though we're a very tiny island. So the first march happened in April of 75. Yeah, so in that first march, they just walked up to the Green Line and handed resolutions, UN resolutions to the UN that called for the return of the refugees to their homes. Of course, that was denied. And they had like over a decade pause and came back in June of 1987 after they saw that their 75 march was being co-opted by the political parties. Because they were distinctly not with a single political party, but represented women's from all paths of life. So I'll go to the next march of the 80s. The first 1987 march, where they broke past the Green Line and managed to get into minefields. And as you can see, the UN actually pretty much guided them into minefields, because there are areas there that they could have walked along that aren't mine-filled. The UN does not come across well in this in this footage, as you can see. The next one happened only a few months later, which is the one that my aunt, mom, and grandma participated in, that I never knew about until like a few years ago, and that's why I started making this film about this movement. So that was the fierce 1987 march, the November 1987 march, that actually they came face to face with the Turkish army, which is what they wanted. They didn't want to be stopped by the UN like the previous one. So every time they were escalating their tactics, they were changing, they were making sure that the symbolism of what they were doing was integrated in what they were trying to say. Both like visually and with the press that they invited in order to cover it. So the next march that they did was actually to occupy the Acropolis in Athens, because the Prime Minister of Turkey was visiting Athens, and they demanded that if they can't visit our ancient monuments in the monuments, then Ozal shouldn't be allowed to visit the Acropolis. A bold move. I don't know if anyone's been to the Acropolis, but you never see it empty, so that's why I love those shots so much. That they managed to shut it down, and trust me, the tourists were not happy. They were yelling at them. So this next one is where they escalated even more in the following year, where they did 2 locations at the same time. So you'll see the first location and then the second location. In 2 different villages. I love exposing the UN because they're not peacekeepers, they're definitely occupiers. So I'll just briefly, because I'm sure I'm running out of time, go into some slides from the film I'm making about the women. And it's a personal journey about discovering this history and how it wasn't archived or taught to me, and the history that I was taught, which was deeply polarizing and alienating. These are images of the archive that the women saved going into our official university library. This is Diana, who you saw speaking to the UN so bravely and valiantly. Cleopatra, who's another one of the great organizers of this movement, and Nikki Caccioni. That's me smelling my grandmother's jasmine and reconnecting with home through the smells and the ideas that these women delivered to me, through their beauty of being able to deliver affect as to why they want to return to their homes, and this connection to their ancestry, to their land, to their past, to their continuity as a person. And that's the Turkish Cypriot flag that still adorns, I guess, or the mountain that divides the capital city.
Thank you so much for that, Stephanie. That was really powerful. And I think for many of us here, I mean, I only got to understand and to know about the Women Walk Home when I visited Cyprus, and I was able to meet one of the organizers of the march, Nikki, and she received an award. But I think what you said really sums up the history of how, our stories as women have been deeply polarized, alienating us from our own realities and disconnecting us from that. So, but I think the important thing here is that we need to realize that the war crimes are continuing. And therefore, like, history needs to be revisited, but more than revisited, it needs to be addressed in terms of retribution. And so at this point, I'd like also to mention that there is going to be an International People's Tribunal on Cyprus on the 13th and 14th of November in Brussels to address the right of the Cypriot people to self-determination and sovereignty. And these women have clearly shown that they have played a major role in terms of the struggle of the Cypriot people for home and homeland. So yes, and I guess in the festival that is coming up on August the 28th and the 29th, hopefully Stephanie will be able to share with us an official trailer of the feature documentary, and which we will of course be, bringing to the festival in terms of raising awareness on the ongoing violations of the Cypriot people's rights and the war crimes of Turkey. So thank you very much for that, Stephanie. And I would like now to introduce our next speaker. She is a former political prisoner and a longtime woman and human rights activist. Sharon Cabusao is a National Council member of Gabriela in the Philippines, a grassroots-based alliance of over 200 women's organizations in the Philippines which advocates for women's liberation, human rights, and national sovereignty. She is also currently the executive director of Lila Pilipina, an organization of World War II comfort women, victims of wartime military sexual slavery by the Japanese Imperial Army. As a freelance writer, she is also one of the founding editors of Pinoy Weekly, an alternative newspaper in the Philippines. Sharon will share with us tonight the stories of comfort women and their fight for dignity, recognition, and retribution. Sharon, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Andrea, and good evening to everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are located. I will be speaking about the comfort women system that Japan, it was a massive case of military sexual slavery during World War II, established by the Japanese imperial government in countries it invaded and occupied, notably in Korea, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, Taiwan, and others. Chinese experts believe that as many as 200,000, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Chinese experts believe that as many as 200,000 Chinese women were enslaved in comfort stations established by the Japanese Imperial Army in 20 provinces of China. In Korea, estimates vary, but the most accepted number is around 20,000. In the Philippines, around 174 were documented by the then Task Force on Filipino Comfort Women, a comparatively small number owing to the inadequacy of conscious documentation in post-war Philippines. This coming out of several victims eventually paved the way for the establishment of Lila Pilipina, a national organization of Filipino women victims of Japanese wartime military sex slavery. A second group of victims surfaced sometime in the early 2000s called the Lolas Campañeras, now united with Lila Pilipina. There are innumerable cases of sexual violence committed against women during wars of aggression or occupation. For instance, Nazi Germany had concentration camps like Mauthausen in Austria, similar to the Japanese comfort women system. Women prisoners from satellite camps were brought to the main camp, such as Mauthausen, to serve the sexual needs of soldiers and selected prisoners alike. This system was never documented, however, thus the women victims were unable to claim justice and reparations. If we can move on to the next slide, please. This is actually a picture of a comfort station in China. on Liji Lane in Nanjing. Okay. The Japanese comfort women system was the first and probably the only documented case of a state-sanctioned system of massive sex slavery. Military correspondences unearthed from Japanese war archives prove the existence of this system of exploitation. The comfort women system is important evidence of how occupying states use sexual violence as an instrument of subjugation. There are slight differences in the narratives of victims. Many were recruited for jobs such as nurses for the Imperial Army, but later forced into sexual servitude. Most were forcibly taken from their homes, schools, forest clearings, or communities. Some were taken along by the mobile troops and turned into both sex slaves and forced laborers. Some were given to Japanese officials as mistresses. Many were taken to comfort stations or brothels. Some were taken to houses in rural areas. But all of them experienced horrendous brutalization in the hands of soldiers of the JIA. Many did not survive. Those who did carried the terrible secret with them for decades until the comfort women movement for justice began. Most were unable to tell their husbands or children. Most confided only to their mothers, who also carried the secret to their graves. Only when the comfort women movement began were they able to reveal themselves to their families. Majority of Filipino comfort women likewise lived the rest of their lives in the margins of society. Majority were unable to return to school, enter formal employment, post-war, or travel out of the country. Most remained poor until their passing, something that they would pass on to their first line of descendants, who also remained poor or marginalized until today. If we can move the next slide to the next slide, please. Filipino comfort women, whom we call our lolas. This is a map of the comfort stations that we have so far documented in the Philippines. But when we talk about a comfort station, we actually talk about a network of structures, such as houses, garrisons, municipal buildings, hospitals, that were used by the Japanese for different purposes. One of which was to establish a comfort station to service the sexual needs of the Japanese soldiers. Filipino comfort women, whom we call our lolas or grandmothers, have, since their coming out in public, carried out numerous forms of actions to demand justice from the Japanese government and recognition from the Philippine government. In the 1990s, they took to the streets in front of the Japanese embassy, the Philippine Department of Foreign Affairs, and held rallies to voice out their demands: justice for Filipino comfort women, official reparations, historical inclusion, and a stop to wars of intervention or occupation. The international movement generated by the courage of comfort women to tell their stories to the world facilitated the filing of cases in Japanese district courts, resolutions in the Japanese Diet, US and Philippine Congresses, several actions from the United Nations, two UN special rapporteurs coming out with special reports in the 90s validating the claims of the victims, UN rapporteurs on violence against women periodically writing both the Japanese and Philippine governments to act on the matter, and the most recent, a CIDO, or the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, recommendation for the Philippine government to grant official recognition and reparations for the victims. Unfortunately, in spite of all these international actions, the Japanese government has continued to deny its responsibility and has even launched an offensive distorting the comfort women narrative by invariably claiming that the matter has already been settled by post-war negotiations or that the women were paid wartime sex workers. But in their lifetime, our lolas did not simply remain as victims. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Lila Pilipina and Gabriela launched a conscious effort to raise their awareness about imperialism and feudalism, such that while they remain committed to the campaign for justice, they have also militantly launched solidarity actions with peasant women struggling for land and rights, against militarization and other forms of human rights violations. These are some of the structures that still exist today, and which were used by the Japanese Imperial Army as comfort stations in the Philippines. This one is located in Laguna, a province next to Manila. To the next slide, please. This one is a building in the heart of Manila in Binondo. This is the building that belongs to the National Administration, Mapping Administration. And on the second floor, in one of the rooms, we have documented cases of Filipino women who were taken or who were imprisoned there by the Japanese army and turned into sex slaves. The next slide is that of the San Agustin Church in the heart also of Manila in Intramuros, which was also used as a comfort station by the Japanese army. Next slide, please. Okay. Our lolas expressed unity with women of other nations experiencing military sexual violence. While demanding justice, our lolas became militant champions of women's liberation from all forms of oppression. As Lola Estelita D. had put it once, I actually don't expect to achieve justice in my lifetime, but I want the current generation to be aware of the perils of wars of aggression. They should study, be vigilant, and oppose this wherever it happens. Thus, we can rightly say that they became staunch anti-imperialists and anti-fascists, even as they were still unable to achieve justice for themselves. Today, many of our lolas, halmunis in Korea, and amas in China have passed away. Memorialization and preservation becomes an important tool for sustaining the campaign for justice for the victims and their families. Japan will never be able to make this issue go away, for the comfort women narratives are already literally deposited in the annals of history. Equally important is continued public education and awareness raising about women and war, how militarism and wars of aggression or occupation utilize sexual violence as an instrument of subjugation, as they confront the reality of wars being fanned by the US in many parts of the world. In Asia Pacific, Japan acts as the junior partner of the US in fanning the flames of war, especially against China. A recently inked military agreement between the Philippines and Japan, called the Reciprocal Access Agreement or RAA, gives license to Japan to once again send soldiers for purposes of war on Philippine soil and to make the Philippines a huge storage for Japan and US missile and other war technology. Thus, organizing the youth, especially young women, as one of our lolas had put it, becomes of paramount importance. To build a movement of young people carrying the twin calls of justice for comfort women and all other victims of military sexual violence, and no to imperialist war. For young people to become activists in the global and national anti-war movements, drawing inspiration from the militant and uncompromising tradition of comfort women, women who survived the imperialist war of World War II and became among the fiercest defenders of women's rights and global peace. Maybe we can move on to the next slides. So these are some of the actions that our grandmothers, our lolas, have launched through the 32 years that the Comfort Women campaign, or since the Comfort Women campaign began in the Philippines. Next slide, please. This is a comfort woman statue which went missing in 2018. Of course, we know who took it away from the artist. It was the Japanese government that expressed its regret upon the installation of markers in the Philippines or anywhere else in the world. The comfort woman statue remains missing to this day. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. We can go to the end of the slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Thank you. Yeah, I think the important messages I get here from the stories that you shared, Sharon, is first of all, the Lolas came out because they started to become empowered, because they started to organize themselves. And that sense of organization and sense of community building among them, supporting each other, was very instrumental in terms of their coming out, publicly. And also the importance of awareness raising, even among themselves, so that in the end, they became the fiercest defenders of human rights and global peace. And memorialization and legacy building is so key in terms of ensuring that the lessons of history are not repeated over and over again. But we're seeing it happening all over, with increasing militarization, wars of aggression, and where women are always the first victims of it. And in the situation of the Philippines, for example, with a multitude of base areas being opened in terms of access to U.S. forces and to all other forces coming up. So we know for a fact, and in the historical experience of Filipino women, where there are U.S. NATO bases, there will be sexual abuse, sexual slavery, and prostituted women. So the struggle continues, and this is happening, like what Pipa was saying earlier about war was never our agenda, and we never started it. And I think we need to really understand that we need to explore all avenues for bringing the voices and amplifying the voices and the stories of these women, so that as you mentioned yourself, the Japanese government, the Philippine government cannot just turn its back, because the history of the women is already in the annals of history. Yeah. So thank you for that, Sharon. And I'll pass this on now to Isabel to introduce our next speaker.
Yes, so our final speaker for today is Mizgin Ebin from the Kurdish Women's Movement, and she is a women's rights activist and member of Congrestar. She grew up in Europe and lived in Rojava for more than 8 years, where she worked in public relations for Congrestar. And today she will share with us about what it means for women in Rojava and north and east Syria to be caught between war and self-defense, and what the integration into the Syrian transitional government means. So go ahead, Miskin.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation and the possibility to be part of this very important seminar, I think, especially in a time when wars are rising everywhere globally and militarization is seen as a solution to the political crisis and the conflicts. To discuss about what it means for women and to show also different perspectives. How I said, I'm with Congrestar. This is a women's organization who's part of the Kurdish women's movement, especially organized in Rojava, northern Syria. And yeah, for us, the Kurdish women's movement that's organized since the 19th, inspired by the Kurdish liberation movement and also the PKK and the Autonomous Women's Organization also inside the PKK and the ideas of Abdullah Öcalan, and something especially that influenced the Kurdish women's movement in Rojava is also the understanding that for a free society, you need that the woman also is free inside this society, and that patriarchy is one of the oldest forms of oppression and domination. And if you struggle against any kind of oppression, then fighting against patriarchy also have to be in the center of your struggle. And from this point, women organized since the 19th, 2005, as a result of it, Congress Dar was founded. And when the revolution in Rojava, northern Syria, started 2011-12, it started in the midst of a civil war, and with ongoing or constant attacks against the region. There were attacks by ISIS, attacks by the Turkish fascist state, attacks by the Ba'ath regime, the Assad regime, and now also we are facing attacks by the new transitional government, which is built up by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who has a history of jihadist fights, also did fight in some areas where our Kurdish people live, again, together with the Turkish state. So, but in the midst of this conflict and the war and this war situation people lived through in Rojava, at the same time, they built also up democratic self-administration. They built up different structures, democratic structures, and women took a very important part in this revolution and in building up this democratic system. So women were since the 19th organized not just women, but the whole society, and also educated women. So when the revolution started from the beginning, it was a women's revolution and also an international revolution. So women took part in all fields of life, and for us it was important not that women are just part of the new system or taking part in it, but also to change the society and challenge patriarchy inside the society, but also defend the values of the people, values for women's rights, and also defend the people against the constant attacks from outside. So also military forces, women protection units were built up, YPJ. In these protection units, they're all female fighters. And in a time when militarization or militant building is like on rise, we see it as necessary to defend ourselves, but also to criticize this militarization and this rising of armings everywhere in the world. And for us it's important to also, when we say we resist or we defend ourselves, it means on the one side to defend ourselves also physically, militarily, but it also means to defend the self-built up structures, to build up a system, to build up an alternative to what the states are imposing to us with the mentality of patriarchal mentality of militarization of state institutions who are not protecting women rights, etc., or the rights of the people. So in Rojava, northern Syria and northern East Syria, the population is very plural. It's like very diverse society there. A lot of different ethnic groups, different religions, etc. So in the midst of the war, the people could build up together the different components of the society, self-administration that is based on radical democracy, like grassroots democracy, women's liberation, and ecological justice. And women took really important role in this revolution, and women also get especially targeted, not just targeted in the, you also shared about your experiences, and we see it also everywhere in the world that women are targeted in terms of sexualized violence, gender-based violence, but also, getting attacked or being like victims or getting mostly affected by it, because they are the one who are like, caring for the family and for society and keep them alive. And we also saw that women who are especially active, who are taking an important role inside the society, women activists, members of Congress, but also women who took a very important role in building up this new democratic system, are targeted specifically, especially by the Turkish state, who don't want any self-organized or democratic structures near their border. We faced a lot of several invasion attacks by the Turkish state, but we also, since 2020, Turkey is waging a drone war against women activists. So since then, they are targeting women with drones, women who are like active in the women's movement, Congress, or how I said, like very active in building up a new society. And how we said, in a world where militarization is presented as the only solution to this conflict or political crisis, we showed that peace. We know that peace is not achieved through weapons or through violence. Peace can just be built through organization of democratic and society, and based on solidarity. And we are not ignoring the meaning or ignoring the violence that has happened, because it is happens. But we have defended ourselves, but we have also protected our city. We have protected our cities from the attacks, but also built up new structures, because that means for us self-defense. We cannot just struggle or fight against something. We have to build up also something new. We have to build up a new mindset, because this is also a protection or way of self-defense. And in Rojava, North and East Syria, women have created or made a lot of achievements throughout the years. Like Women's Council were established, educational institutions, academies, cooperative, political assemblies were built up. And at the same time, the structures of the autonomous administration that was built up was also influenced by women. There were a co-chair system, so that at every level, in every institution of this administration, there have to be a woman and a man leading the positions, not just for equality, this is something important, but also to build up a collective way or relations to make decisions and not just individually or one by one person. A gender quote of 50% were introduced in all institutions of the autonomous administration. A lot of other parties or organizations also adopted this model, and different women's organizations, autonomous women organizations were built up in the last 14 years. Maybe we as Congress have the most experience of being autonomously organized, but there was always the mutual solidarity and support in Rojava, northern East Syria, among women. So for us was important that every woman is organized, and there are so many women from different ethnic groups, religion groups, etc. So for us, it's important that they are organized, even if they don't find themselves in Congress or in our movement. For us, it was again important to support them and share experience so they can organize themselves autonomously. And how I said, we have the Women Protection Units, YPJ, which gained mostly attention in 2014 while they were fighting against ISIS in Kobane. But they're not just fighting against ISIS, they also fight against, or not fight it, but defend themselves or the society against attacks from Turkey, from the actual government and the government before in Syria. And YPG has a very important meaning for us. So it's not just a military protection, it's also protection against, also they're fighting also against this mindset of the jihadists, against ISIS, against like fascism. So this is connected to each other. And when we say we build up different achievements, how I now explained, like the different achievements we had in Rojava, they were just able because on the front line, women were protecting our security. So there's the fish, so I don't have so many time. What I just want to say is now for the actual phase or the time we are facing with the new transitional government is very critical because the new government, how I said, are like, are like mostly, they have like a very jihadist, very Islamistic, very conservative view and mindset. And we have a democratic women's liberation ecology mindset. And now there's a discussion about integration. And I think integration and dialogue also with the parties who are causing conflicts are important because we have to sit with everyone who's part of the conflict and have a dialogue. And this we have now with the Syrian transitional government, which is not legitimized by any democratic means or by the people, but they're in power because they have violence power. Like they have weapons, they have like this kind of violent power. So now the discussion how the women's protection units is be integrated, how the different achievements of women for women's rights are being integrated in this new system or this new Syria we want to build up. And the transitional government made it very clear they don't see women in the military force. They say it very openly. In our system, military system or defense system, there are no women. We don't want you there. We can change our system for you. But we say it's not just about the military, like it's one part, but we have to insist and also be part of the military as women, as like a close group, like not as individuals, but as a united force, be part of it. Because if you deny today this right to women, then tomorrow you will deny other rights to women. So this is also a struggle or like a topic that we are working on today, actually. And yeah, this is shortly about Rojava and the struggle we are doing there. And yeah, the most important thing is sure that we believe in that without women's liberation, no society can be free, and that it have to be in the center of our struggle, and it is in the center of our struggle. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for explaining all of that and also giving background and context to the Kurdish women's freedom movement and the ideology of women's liberation that necessitated the creation of like the YPJ, for example, and this like legitimate self-defense that is needed. And yeah, I think like right now with integration, I mean, a lot of things are unclear, you know, about how things are going to be integrated between the administration and the transitional government. But I know one thing's for sure is that the women's movement has always said that there will persist and exist no matter what. So to see like how this will shape out and what form will it take, I think that we'll see in the future how this will happen. And I know for sure like the YPJ will not give up. And it's also necessary that they continue to exist given all the context that you just said about Syria. So yeah, thank you for that.
So tonight we have heard the stories that you've heard tonight speak about women's courage and heroism, their passion and compassion, their creativity and imagination, and their commitment to pursue their vision of justice, equality, and peace in our communities and societies. So let's now talk about, how can we further build on this knowledge and experiences and strengthen our bonds of sisterhood and solidarity that we can create impactful and lasting social change. How do we amplify best practices? How do we engage the women in our neighborhoods, in our parent teachers associations, in our trade unions, in sectoral organizations, women in politics, in churches? How do we reach out and motivate migrant and refugee women, working women, peasant women, professionals, young women, and so on, to the cause of peace building, upholding and advancing democratic rights, and supporting genuine social change and liberation? So we've received a few questions for our speakers, but also we would like to, for you to share your thoughts and your ideas on these questions. There have been a few items that our speakers have spoken about, like solidarity building, and I think you've seen this throughout, the stories of the Cypriot women, and I was really amazed that there were Palestinian women even that early on, supporting the Women Walk Home, and that it was really an international sort of gathering of women that supported that initiative. So, and now I understand the very close relationship between Cyprus and Palestine, because they've always been saying that there's a very close bond, and it goes very deeply. And then Sharon was also talking about like that of building solidarity across the divide, the sectoral divide, of among women. No? So actually the first question that we have is for Stephanie. So the question is, can you share with us how Cypriot women are organizing today and what their issues are? That's the first question. So would you like to respond, Steph?
Sure. So sadly, the Women Walk Home disbanded shortly after the last 1989 march, because people pursued like more right-wing symbolism and things that they didn't all agree on anymore. So that's where Women Walk Home ended up, but they believe that they completed sort of a cycle, or a circle rather, reflecting on it now 30 plus years later. Women in Cyprus now face sort of, I don't want to say the typical challenges, but they are of like sexual violence, of abuse in the home, etc., etc. And we have 1 in 4 the Cypriot population is now not like from here, born here. So we have a deep, a very large migrant community who face unique challenges and deep problems with the state and how they're supported. So our landscape is quite different than it was in the 80s and the 70s. Especially in regards to the representation of the population here. So yeah, sadly, there's most of the women's groups that are organizing now are political party affiliated, and there are a lot of what I hate using the word is a bicommunal organizing groups for women. I hate using bicommunal because it's a very trendy word here, or a very they like to use it to pretend that Turkish and Greek Cypriots are not the same community, but we are. So that's kind of how people organize with now as nonprofit work. And yeah, I think that's all that's happening now. As I said, the film sort of retraces that the history because of how sort of silenced our revolutionary history has been for the purpose of the status quo. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, Steph, that the IPT on Cyprus is also making a lot of new contacts with different organizations like the families of the survivors, and families of victims of sexual violence, and I think that this will create some sort of momentum in again contributing to the reawakening, we guess, we hope of the women's movement by becoming very aware of their own very revolutionary history. Yeah. And we're looking at your documentary as one of the one of the keys to opening up that opportunity for revisiting the past, and also hopefully addressing what's happening currently in Cyprus. So the next question here is for Sharon. So two questions, related questions. One is, I'm curious how families and the Filipino society, which I understand is complex and multiple parts, reacted to when women who were part of the comfort women system, who often kept that part of their lives secret, started to tell the truth and create these militant movements to get recognition, justice, and reparations. And related to that, how do we continue to carry forward the fight and legacy of comfort women in the years to come, as there are less and less Lolas who can share their stories? Sharon, you're muted.
Okay. With regards to the first question, no? Actually, the Filipino public was very supportive of the Comfort Women campaign, even up to now, no? But it is the Philippine government which has really past and present governments which really have not supported the Comfort Women campaign, mainly because of the neo-colonial relations between Japan and the Philippine government, where Japan remains the #1 creditor country to the Philippines, funding many of the flagship projects of government, which in turn are sources of graft and corruption for many high government officials. So this kind of what we would call a symbiotic relationship between the two governments that have prevented really the Philippine government from taking a strong stance on behalf of the comfort women. And in fact, in recent times, it's now actually war that is on the agenda of the two governments. They have not only signed the military agreement, they have agreed to take part in any in case a wars happens, no, in Taiwan, in case they say that China attacks or invades Taiwan, no, the Philippines, Japan, and South Korea would be among the first governments to respond. The Philippines now hosts many of the advanced missiles and war technology that the US and Japan are using in the Asia Pacific to fan the flames of war. As to the second question, um, we cannot stop the march of time. In the case of the Filipino comfort women, and memorialization now becomes a powerful tool for inspiring many other women victims of sexual violence to learn from the lessons and the legacy of struggle that the Filipino comfort women have left us. Had you met the comfort women, they were not really the kind of women who were meek, who were victims. They were very, very strong, empowered women after having gone through some education and organizing efforts within the women's movement. They have learned, for instance, they have understood that imperialism and not simply um, evil attitudes of the Japanese officials, but imperialism and war that has caused them to experience the tragedy that they experienced in World War II. So memorialization and the organizing of young people, especially young women, that they be made aware of the perils of wars of aggression. These are the two ways that we can think of, two ways to move forward the struggles of the comfort women and all other women victims experiencing military sexual violence in the Philippines and in other countries.
Um, I also see so many similarities between what's happening in Cyprus and the frustration, for example, of reparations
Mm,
from government and accountability, because also, like, the UN system, like what Stephanie was mentioning there earlier, that it's really unmasking the UN, like,
mm,
that guy there saying that I'm here to defend the status quo. And that is exactly what the UN is all about. And the
mm,
frustration that, like with what's happening in Cyprus, 40% of the territory is Turkish, quote unquote, occupied.
mm,
3% is the sovereign base area, huh? Mind my word, sovereign base area of the United Kingdom. Yeah.
mm,
And then there is the what do they call it? The green the UN buffer zone that
mm,
stretches across the country and even cuts across the city of
mm,
Nicosia. So
mm,
the frustration of people as well with the UN systems that they've been bringing this to the attention of the UN for so decades and decades and decades. And like for the comfort women as well, said now you have everything at the UN, rapporteurs and all that sort of thing. But you lose your breath. And at the end of the day, where does this leave you? Uh, the
mm,
cyber situation remains, unanswered and unresolved. The comfort women issue remains unanswered and resolved. So how do we effectively um, manage or navigate these existing institutions to really impact on our causes? That
mm,
is to everyone.
mm.
Yeah.
Uh,
If you would like to respond, yes.
I think the only importance that the UN has for the struggles of many women is the documentation of experiences, that happens when you submit your cases to the UN. But other than that, and I think that's very important, as in the case of the comfort women, I mean, without documentation, we could never prove that the Japanese, for instance, set up these systems, the system of massive exploitation and oppression of women, Like what the Japanese government is trying to do now is to distort the narrative, but it cannot be 100% successful because the narratives are actually documented not only in the private spheres, no, like for example here in the office of Lila Pilipina, but also with what are considered as internationally accepted institutions like the United Nations. So I think that's the only value that we have when we engage with the United Nations. But again, some would say it's better to do something at the UN than not do anything at all. Like we maximize all avenues or arenas for the struggle that we want to advance, no? But we just have to be really clear about which are the primary arenas and which are the secondary arenas and which ones will really um, help us achieve our aspirations and which ones will only serve certain specific or very tactical objectives. We just have to be very clear about this. Yeah, I think that's how I would see it.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody else would like to address the question? Yes, Ms. Gin.
I completely agree with Sharon. And I think that it's important, even if we have, at the first place, we have to believe in our own strength and our society, on the base, on the people, and that we also see that the United Nations never really stopped a war or protected people from war. This is something sure. And we, for example, we are also against, we say that a nation state or states don't protect the rights of the people or women rights, etc. But it's again important to not leave these areas empty. So you still have to try to reach out, to use all the means you have to make aware about your situation, to lobbying, to make aware, and also try to gain achievements in these institutions and organizations that the nation states or the capitalist system sees as a solution. We don't see them as solution, but the system we are living in sees them as solution. So it's also important to don't leave these areas empty. And I think that a lot of social like society or like movements, social movements, leftist movements, women's movements, also because they have their strategical goals, what they want to achieve, they focus on it and leave the other part, what is also important, empty, not working on it. And I think that you have to do both, even if it's not helping it's not your strategical goal to be part of the state, etc. Or I think it's very important, even if I don't believe in the UN.
But that's a very important point that you mentioned, that, these spaces, women need to be there as well, wherever, these spaces are, and there are opportunities for amplifying our voices, then yeah, we should take those opportunities. Yeah. Um, Next question to all the speakers here. It's a pity that Pipa, I think, had to leave early. Yeah, she was on a she was on a webinar role. But one of the objectives of the resistance for peace, democracy, and liberation is really, one of the challenges is how do we bring the cause of building peace and in defense of democracy and people's rights. How do we bring that to the ordinary, person on the street, to the ordinary women, to the migrants, to the refugees? What are the practices that have succeeded in our communities and in our organizations that we can also share and amplify, and bring it to, like, to a continuing campaign for building resistance for peace and democracy and liberation. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I could say something.
Yes, Ms. Gin, please.
I think it's a very important question because sometimes we lose ourselves in reaching out the politics, the state institutions who are like having insane politics, and forget to build up our own base and yeah, societal support. And for us, as Kurdish Women's Movement, it was very important to go from house to visit the people, visit the women, ask them about problems they have in daily life, about how their situation is, like building up relations and also trust. And maybe for some societies, maybe in Germany or in Switzerland, it would be strange if you go from house to house to the people to speak with them. But I think maybe in other places you need other methods. But the tool, yeah, you need tools to, yeah, build up relationships with women because every woman has like strength and power and has something to give. So you have to reach out the woman personally. If it means to organize breakfast, if it means to organize a course about how to sewing or how to cut hair, like very simple things that women maybe like to join, even if they are not political yet or are not thinking about being engaging themselves politically. So trying to find like in society like things and to engage with women. And this is something I think important. And then you can also educate, it's also to do education. But we are sometimes too far from society. It's like very, yeah, difficult for us to reach out in society. But we have to start with ourselves, with our family members, with our friends, because I see a lot of people who are like politically active, but their family members, their friends, and their surrounding are not involved in any of that. And you have to try to involve them to give and to organize people around you so that you can organize wider, yeah, people in society. And I think this is something very, yeah, it's lacking, it's too, yeah, coming too short.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Gin. So I guess, the key here is still to organize and to build relations with the communities and, to find out what their situation is and how they're doing and what issues and problems and challenges, our communities of women and within the larger community of our people are facing, no? So I guess, to have our pulse in terms of the actual situation on the ground is very important. We also raised here the importance of raising awareness and ongoing information and education, especially among the young generation, so that they can be proud and they can own the history of their mothers and their grandmothers and their great grandmothers, and to continue on with that legacy. Is very important. The memorialization is very important. Building solidarity. Um, Sharon mentioned the documentation, and that has been echoed by Stephanie as well. The documentation is so important, and the archives that you have shared with us, Stephanie, really speaks to that, the importance of having that, in in the historization of our of the women's struggles wherever they are, and defining the primary and secondary arenas of our struggle, where we can make the most impact is very important. And what Pipa said earlier about like, stronger together and drawing on the strength of others to amplify our voices is so important as well. So, yeah, with this, I guess, we will carry this with us to the next stage of our campaign, which will be the festival on the 28th and the 29th of August, as still part of the resistance campaign. And also the culminating activity of this campaign will be the International People's Tribunal on Cyprus. Both events will happen in Brussels. The IPT on Cyprus will be November 13 to 14. So we hope that, one way or the other, somehow you will be able to join us for these festivities. Thank you so much to our speakers, and I'll turn it over now to Isabel. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all so much for your presentations today. And yeah, it was really engaging. And I just wanted to, just close up the evening before we go. I just want to say that today, like a lot of important bonds of sisterhood and solidarity have been forged here. And, more than ever, we as women face the arduous task of building peace amid increasing militarization and wars, of defending democracy amid the erosion of human rights and civil liberties taking place at an alarming rate in the world today, and of upholding the liberation of women and the majority of peoples and nations from the yoke of oppressive systems, colonial rule, or authoritarian regimes. And this is a daunting task, but we continue to hold high the torch of defiance and hope that has been passed on to us. And we look forward to working with you all in amplifying women's voices and presence in the pursuit of our common aspirations. And we hope that we can count on your support for the campaign of resistance for peace, democracy, and liberation. So, again, thank you to all the speakers for your time and the inspiring stories that you've shared. And thank you to all who have joined us in this webinar. We'll keep you updated for the upcoming campaign and related events. And yeah, we hope to see you at the festival for the Peace and Liberation on the 28th and 29th of August in Brussels. So good night, everybody. Be well and be safe.
Night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, and thank you for organizing.